I believe so.
Okay. All right, we're ready to go. All right, so we'll call this meeting to order and I will ask Mr. Parrish to take the roll.
John Wyckoff,
Present?
Doug Bruce,
Present.
Eric Spoonmore. Here. Joyce Pauling,
Present.
Jay Bear.
Here.
Adam Tees. Here. Jim Silverstein. Here.
Thank you. And you will note that Jim Whitlatch and Jeff Underwood are both with us remotely. Jim Whitlatch and I talked on the phone today and I told him that he doesn't know that when he's doing this remotely, he's on the big screen like we're at a drive-in movie. So he's more present than he even is when he's here personally. So thank you both for being with us. Before we get into the items, I want to make a couple of notations. First, the agenda that we sent out originally, and it was my fault, had August 7th as the next meeting date. It's actually August 15th. I was more shocked at the word August than I was at the number 7, so was distracted by that, but our next meeting is August 14th and not the 7th. Secondly, I want to say to our CIB members, we've inundated you with a lot of information both yesterday and even today. We're not doing that intentionally. It's just that we've gotten a lot of information that's come in late. This had to do with contracts and a number of other things, and we've gotten it to you as quickly as we can. I apologize for you being overwhelmed by some of it. We're certainly going to go through it today. Thirdly, I would ask that because we have such a busy agenda and a number of items that I'm sure will be worthy of perhaps your comments or discussion, that you ask to be recognized before you speak, because we're trying to make sure that Mr. Parrish has an opportunity to make sure that our minutes are reflective of who's talking, and so that our audience knows who's talking as well. So if you'll do that courtesy, that will be extremely helpful. After called order, the second item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. We sent out the minutes of our June 12th meeting, and you've received the claims today. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so
Moved by member Pauling. Is there a second? A second by Mr. Spoonmore. Any discussion of those items? If not, if you'll please take the roll.
John Wyckoff,
Yes.
Doug Bruce,
Yes.
Eric Spoonmore. Yes. Joyce Pauling,
yes.
Jay Bear.
Yes.
Adam Tees.
Yes.
Jim Silverstein.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 3, treasurer's report, Mr. Spoonmore.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehart. I got a couple items that I want to report to my colleagues today. I think I'll start with, of course, we have the 2025 budget request that we're going to look at, but before I get to that, I want to give an update on where we are with the Capital Improvement Board's 2024 revised budget that we had requested. The original budget was for $250,000. We needed another 350,000 or so to get us through the end of 2024. We went to the city council last month, made that request. It was a delightful meeting. We didn't have very many questions, and so that was we got the recommendation of the legislative body, the city council, to pass along to the Food and Beverage Tax Advisory Commission, which is the second step in the process. We'll have to get their recommendation, and we do not yet have a date set for going to the FABTAC or the Food and Beverage Tax Advisory Commission. We expect that to happen sometime in July. The county is still working to get their folks schedules so that we can put a date set for that. But I don't anticipate we're going to have any hiccups there. And then we are scheduled, assuming everything goes well with FABTAC, we're scheduled to go back to the city council for final appropriation and approval on August 7th. So that's where things stand, and hopefully we'll have the revised budget approved and ready to go after that city council meeting in August. And so I just wanted to give everybody that update. Are there any questions on any parts of that process that I can answer at this point? Mr. Underwood, I don't know if you had any additional information to share as well.
No additional information.
you said it was a delightful meeting and there were no questions.
Very,
Those two things were connected?
I connect those two things.
Okay, very good, very good. And, okay, and while I'm looking out, I want to make note, Sydney Zulik is with us, a member of our city council, and Stephen Lucas, who's the city council attorney, is with us today, and Stephen is taking a new position, and this will be his last meeting that he's attending. I don't believe we've run him off, but he's saying that we have not, for those of you who can't see Stephen. So congratulations on your new position, Stephen.
Yeah, congratulations.
Well, that surprised me, probably surprised Stephen too.
Okay, so now I want to move on to approval of the 2025 Capital Improvement Board request. Mr. Underwood will kind of get into the numbers and the details here, but just give everybody an overview. The city utilizes a two-step process for the presentation and approval of the city annual budget. The first step is presentation of the proposed budget to the city council in late August. That happens over a period of several nights. And then the second step is the formal presentation, which they conduct in 2 evenings in late September, early October, when they do the official ratification of the budget at their second public hearing on it in October. So this will follow the same process. We have to request the dollars of the legislative body. It'll have to go to the Monroe County Food and Beverage Tax Advisory Council for their review and recommendation, and then go back to the council for final appropriation. So the budget that we have is essentially all in category 3 services. It's $898,400, and then we have $1,000 for supplies, $0 in capital line, and $0 in personnel services. And so the professional services include services that would be provided by the board's attorney and controller. We're used to all of that. We do anticipate some increases with those 2 services as we move into the construction phase of the project next year. And then the professional services external include services like our owner's rep. And then there's an other category, and that would include services such as the design and maintenance of the website, testing and environmental services, commissioning and utility connection fees. So just a broad overview there of what we're looking at with this budget, but I want to give Mr. Underwood an opportunity to go into any additional detail on the individual categories.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you, Eric. And yes, so this is basically the operating budget of the CIB for next year. In addition to that, the other costs would be the architectural design costs. And as you are aware, the city had already approved those funds, and there's a PO outstanding at the city. We would receive the invoices, and you all would approve those, and then we would send those to the controller's office for processing and payment. And Controller McQuillan is online with us today, so shout out to her and thank her for her assistance and help in moving these things forward. She's been wonderful on helping us get our claims processed and approved, so thank you very much on that. And then the third piece of that will be the construction cost with the CMC with Weddle. We anticipate that we would amend our budget later on once the sale of the bonds goes through and the funds are available. Then we'll come in and add those costs to our budget, and that'll be sometime over the next, I would say, 6 to 8 months. We're working with the controller's office and city administration on the timing of those bond sales. So as Eric pointed out, we've got $1,000 in supplies, and that would just be for miscellaneous things that we might need. $2,000 for our website. A big shout out to Mr. Bear and the help that he's had in getting us with that. And then Jim's group and myself with the controller and legal costs. And as Eric said, we anticipate that those will ramp up in the coming year with more activity on the construction side, as well as JS Held's owner's rep costs as well, being an integral part of what we're doing there. And then the other, that's for contracts that we will hold directly as well, and that would be for such things as testing and environmental at about estimated about $200,000, commissioning at about $60,000, and then utility connections of around $100,000. And those are the direct utility connection costs that we would incur to disconnect and or add new connections as we build through that as well. And thanks to Deb and her group on helping us pull those numbers together. And again, the total request is $899,400, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that might come up. Thank you.
Why don't we see if there's a motion to approve the budget, and then we'll have an opportunity for discussion, questions, or comments. So is there a motion to approve the 2025 budget request?
So made.
Is there, Mr. Bruce has made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And Member Polling has seconded. So we will now open the floor for discussion, questions, comments on the budget. Mr. Tees?
So one aspect of this budgeting effort that we're now getting into with contracts and these kind of agreements for our professional services would be to see this in the context of what in my line of work at IU, we would call a cost model. We would see this as a total project cost laid out in context related to construction cost, architecture and engineering fees, everything involved in the project. And I guess I'm trying to gauge, I'm looking between you, Mr. President, and our owner's representative. At some point, it would be very helpful. It actually would be helpful now to have this in a cost model so that we know, are these services that we're asking of our professional staff in line with what a project of this size should be doing? Do we get a sense of what their percentage of overall construction costs? There are some modicum of industry standards in this area. So is that something that has been developed? I think we need that to make some future decisions about many of these items, to see how it fits in the context of the overall, because that's your ultimate cost control mechanism for all of us. The end game is the total project cost, and it all rolls together. Has that ever been developed, or Deb or
Yeah,
Mary or?
Yeah, I don't know. Jeff, do you want to? I should defer to.
That's okay. Jeff, do you want to respond to that, or is that something we want to kick back to JS Held because this is certainly a piece of it, but the bigger picture is what we're working towards developing in these contractual relationships and as we move forward to construction. So this is a piece, it's not the whole picture. So how do we move forward to describe the whole picture?
I will let Deb speak, and then if I've got any additional comments, I'll jump in on that.
So the answer is yes, we can absolutely do that, and we have done that. This is focused on how the city does their budgeting, and so obviously we're focused on the things that the city needs to get that approval. But yes, we have a cost model. Yes, we can do that. Let me give you some round numbers off the cost model that may help you. We're running about, the hard construction cost is running about 74% of the total project budget, which seems in line with the industry in terms of it can run anywhere from 70 to 80%, depending on how much FF&E you have, which we're going to have some, particularly with our kitchen. And we can speak to, so that's sort of the big picture of it. When it comes to other fees, like the architect, I can speak to that during that piece of it. But from a big picture perspective, that's what we're running.
It would be really helpful to have that.
Other questions? Mr. Silverstein.
I know that the process of going through the city and FabTech and back to the city and all that is kind of cumbersome. Is there, and we don't have any detail on this 898 figure. Is there any contingency built in there? Is there any 10% contingency built in so that we don't have to go back to FabTech if we run just a little bit over?
Our goal, let me attempt to answer this. I think there is detail within the 899,000 built into the narrative and the descriptions of these various categories. FabTech, and Joyce reminded me this morning that KISS should be our model, which is keep it simple, stupid. And we use acronyms, and everybody in the audience might not know FabTech is the Food and Beverage Tax Advisory Commission. But as we move forward with all of this, and Jim, now I've lost sight of what your question was. I feel like Joe Biden. What just happened here?
Oh, boy.
Sid,
Yeah. My question was, this 898.4 sounds like a really exact figure. I'm just wondering
Oh,
if
okay.
if there's
Yeah, I'm
any,
sorry.
if there's any contingency built in there, so
Yeah.
that we're not going, if we run a little bit over on something, are we going back to FabTech mid-year?
It is our goal that this budget is not one that we will want to go back to the city council and ask them to review it again and go back through that process. And that's why the numbers have been put together in the fashion in which they have, with the exception that when we get to the bonding process, and if the city council approves the bond and we move forward with the construction bond, we will have to go back and amend this budget sometime in 2025 to put those construction costs in the budget. But my direction and instruction constantly to everyone is we don't want to have to go back. So let's make sure that we're being as all inclusive as we can be, so we don't have to go back through the council again, and then have to go back through FabTech and back to the council, so that we can avoid that, what might appear to be a cumbersome process, but it's the process. Mr. Spoonwell?
Yeah, just to reiterate that, Mr. Underwood and I, we had there was a lot of thoughtful input on, the dollar amounts that we had budgeted for legal, for controller, for owner's rep. And I know we spent time talking with each of those folks to come up with, what is a very realistic number here that, we feel like will cover us for the year, because that was a goal for us, for sure. So we feel very confident that this will be, the contingencies built in there, that this will cover us without having to go through those processes over and over again.
And as, if I may, and as we've examined the various professional fees, for instance, internal, we've tried to take a look at past performance, if you will, and then extrapolate that out over a year, understanding considerations for more work and more effort required as we move into construction phases. So it has been considered, and believe me, we don't want to add to the cumbersomeness of the process by having to go back and go back and go back.
Thanks.
Other questions, comments? Seeing none, so we have a motion to approve the budget. Mr. Paris, if you would take the roll, please.
John Wyckoff,
Yes?
Doug Bruce,
Yes.
Eric Spoonmore,
Yes.
Joyce Pauling,
Yes.
Jay Bear,
Yes.
Adam Tease,
Yes.
Jim Silverstein.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Item number 4, and Mr. Whitlatch will lead us through items 4 and 5, but approval of the architect engineer contract. Mr. Whitlatch?
Yes, thank you. And my presentation will start with the apology that John started the meeting with, which, sorry to inundate you with these long contracts just prior to the meeting or within just a few days of the meeting. We are very anxious to get these contracts going. And with the 4th of July holiday and all kinds of things happening, we were scrambling to get these ready and get these to you. So I'll take a little bit of time, and Deb and JS Held has done a nice job of putting the parameters of these contracts before you on the PowerPoint that's being shared with you right now. So basically, we're asking you to approve and authorize John as the president to sign 2 contracts or variations of contracts with the architect engineer, which is Schmidt Associates, and with Weddle Brothers as the CMC contract for this project. So the first one that we've done, and I think I saw Sarah maybe in the audience there. So Sarah, I'm going to invite you to make any comments you want to make after I'm done, as well as Deb or Mary can make comments. But the architect's contract is a standard AIA Architects Institute standard contract form that has a project assumption, as is stated there, of 60,000 square feet of new construction, 40,000 square feet of renovation, and generally speaking, is based on a construction cost of $52 million. The services, as stated there, include basic services, designing for LEED, geotechnical, environmental phase 1, existing building documentation, food service code, branding, acoustical, and reimbursables. And they will be entering into or have arrangements with sub consultants that are listed there, being the design architects, structural engineer, civil engineer, and the others listed there. The fee for that that we have discussed with them is going to be is based generally depending upon it will be set at the time when the final design is done, and will be based upon the contract cost. Depending on that contract cost, it's a little bit of a sliding scale on the percentage, but it's somewhere around 7.5 to 7.8% will be their fee. And that fee is broken down before you on the PowerPoint slide, and that explains where and how the fee is made up. So the contract contains many provisions that we have gone through regarding different aspects of what an architect does, basic services, additional services, all of those things are contained in the contract, but this sets forth the basic parameters and the basic fee that's related to part of that. So at this time, I'll pause for that and let Deb, Mary, or Sarah, or anyone, at least I think is on the phone, for Schmidt, if anybody wants to make any additional comments, then before we see if there's a motion and allow for any further discussion or comments.
Before others make comments, let me simply mention that when you look at the estimated total fee, that fee has been set aside since 2019, when the city council passed the budget for this. And FabTech approved that budget, so this approval for these dollars already exists. And we already have a process to move these dollars through the purchase order process with the city controller's office. So that's how we cover these expenses. So with that, let me turn back to either Sarah or Deb.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is, just as a reminder, this is a fee that was set in 2019, and we should thank Schmidt Associates for not increasing it at the scale that other things have been increasing since 2019, and keeping our project on target for this. I think that's important. So thank you.
Yes.
Which maybe goes to one thing I was going to say. This is a complex project with a complicated team. So the entirety of the original team, including engineers, landscape architects, the civil engineers, are all back, including Convergence, our design, and they kept everything the same as well. So that's all included in the base design services fee.
Thank you. John, I think if there's a motion, we can take that, and then if there's any questions or further discussion, then we can go from there.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the contract for architect and engineer as proposed?
I'll move approval of the contract for architect and engineer with Smith Associates.
Mr. Spoonmore has moved it. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Silverstein. So now I'd open the floor for discussion or comment on the contract. Mr. Baer.
2 questions, if I may. The 52 million construction cost estimate that the fees are somewhat tied to, did that come from the construction team, or how did we settle on that number?
Let me turn back to Deb.
So that was set through the study that was done by Schmidt Associates. So they provided the initial analysis of it. And then when JS Health joined the process, we did an independent analysis, and worked together to come to that final conclusion of 52 million. So that has been our assumption for some time during the study.
And the folks that
And
have
that's
to
hard-
build it feel good about that number, more importantly.
Yes, so if they're gonna say it's all depending on what's on the final documents,
Sure.
which we're obviously getting started on the design. But yes, I think there's been a validation that yes, everybody believes that that is a doable project. Keep in mind that this is hard construction cost of 52 million. There are additional costs on top of that. As I mentioned earlier to Mr. Teese, our hard construction costs are running about 75% of the total project. But it is the biggest piece.
So if it's 25% on top of that, right, in theory, right, so it's 65.
Yeah.
Is your all-in number plus our own expenses, let's say 70 to make it easy. How do we feel about 70 vis-a-vis our bonding capacity for the numbers that we actually have?
Well, what we've talked about in the past has been, remember that we have food and beverage tax dollars available as well. So it's been a combination of food and beverage tax, which right now stands at about our portion, about $19 million. So a $70 million project roughly with $19 million in food and beverage tax dollars available at this time leaves what's left for the bonding process. And everyone seems to be comfortable that that is doable.
Who is comfortable?
Well, I think Jeff did some initial analysis on the bonding capacity
Yes.
based on his previous, so I don't know if Jeff wants to speak to the bonding capacity. I think right now the city has, as I understand it, is in the process of retaining or has retained services of bond counsel, and they are running numbers. And I believe a meeting is getting set up with the city, but Jeff has had most of his conversations with the controller.
Yeah, it's been a number we've talked about consistently throughout this, even this current process beginning last October. Mr. Underwood, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we're, as Deb said, yeah, I think we're comfortable with the amount of funding that's available against the budget, projected costs. We are working with, Controller McQuillan to set up a meeting with, their bond counsel and financial advisors so we can get some updated numbers on both the amount of bonding capacity as well as, the timing of those bonds. So, obviously, we'll true that up as we get to the bond, and we continue to collect food and beverage dollars each month. And from what I can see, is they're remaining very strong, if not exceeding what has been collected in the past. So I'm comfortable with the numbers.
And the reality is that once we know what that food and beverage tax number is, and once the city knows with bond counsel assistance, what that bond capacity is, that will give us a budget from which we'll need to adjust this project if we have to. So if that budget comes out at less than what we've been estimating as a combined roughly $70 million, if it turns out less than that, then we're going to have to adjust our project. So those are the realities.
And there is sorry, if I just add on to that, Mr. Ricker, there is a clause in the architectural contract that says if the 52 million changes, right, then the fee will adjust as
Okay,
well.
that's exactly what I was saying.
Yes,
Yeah.
so that is, and it will determine, it's actually the first asterisk there at the bottom, that at the end of final design, whatever the number is, the fee will adjust accordingly.
Great, that's what I was looking for, because if we're gonna say 52 and the fee is based on that, it might not be 52,
Yeah.
then how do we have a contract?
Fair question. So that language is in there.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Just to be clear, so the soft costs don't affect these fees at all? Okay.
And that was Mr. Silverstein. Mr. Teese.
It's always difficult to have these kind of public negotiation conversations, but we do them because we're protecting the interests of the people who paid money into this project. Has your firm and our team negotiated any form of consideration of the money we've already paid you in this effort into this contract? Because you're not starting this project out, right? You've been thinking about this for a long time, and we paid you for a fair amount of that thinking, not anywhere near what it takes to design and build a building. But are we getting any consideration for what we've already paid?
It is not written in the contract that we're getting consideration for what you've already paid. However, the original fee for this project was set around 8.158 a quarter. And it is written around 7.5, 7.7%. And so that's where that bridge money comes into play.
Okay. And then I would like to make sure I am on I am still uncomfortable with the idea that we are renovating 40,000 square feet of this building. I am very uncomfortable. This building is in excellent shape. And so I don't know how that becomes the scope of work, but I'm not comfortable with that number or the idea that we need to renovate significant parts of this building.
Well, and I think that'll flesh out during the design phase. So as we move into this design phase, I think those will be the things that will be examined.
Agreed. It was listed as a criteria under your contract. So.
Yeah. And let the record reflect that the record has often reflected Mr. Teese's questions about that. So I'll, Mr. Bruce.
No, I agree with Adam on that. And what I guess what made me feel comfortable with that is it does, when we were talking about having some leeway in this project, it gives us, I'd hate for us to say, we're only doing 10,000 square feet. And then we get in here and we find out, oh, we really need to do 15 because we're connecting somewhere. So I know what you're saying with the 40, because that just seems like, wow, I mean, all the feet. Yeah, do we really need to do the whole building? But I think it gives us a cushion to then, as you said, as we work down the final design, then we kind of can carve out what that's gonna be. You know, I mean, I haven't walked it and looked around, I would assume because of the last renovation that the bathrooms meet the current ADA in the building and what are we gonna do where we connect, and are we gonna find that mechanical systems are gonna need a big upgrade or something? And so I like having that cushion in there. I'd be afraid if we said, let's do 10,000, but I appreciate your point on that, because I don't want us to just go willy-nilly down the road of thinking we're just renovating this whole building.
I could address your concern, Mr. Tease. I think it defines the outside boundaries of what could happen on this project, and it will pull into what makes sense. Not renovate something just do it.
Well, the process will be dynamic. I mean, we will be constantly visiting and revisiting these issues as a board as we go forward, and the board will have ultimate approval of the design. So we'll have ample opportunity to weigh in early and often before we come to some final design. Mr. Spoonmore.
Yeah, I just want to, in the base design services, I guess kind of going back to what I believe the city council's desires are, is that we're not spending any money on parking garages. And so that purchase order, my understanding, is in the process of being closed or has been closed. That was initially appropriated for like 1.5 million, I think. None of that is reflected, none of that money for parking garages is reflected in these dollar amounts.
That's correct.
Okay.
There's no parking garage dollars in any of these amounts, and there's no hotel dollars that
Right.
in any of these amounts.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for those who may not have heard, there's no parking garage dollars in here, nor are there
Any hotel.
hotel dollars. Hotel dollars are the hotel's a separate project.
Correct.
Other questions? Further discussion? Hearing none, if you would take the roll, please.
John Wyckoff,
Yes?
Doug Bruce,
Yes.
Eric Spoonmore,
Yes,
Joyce Pauling,
Yes.
Jay Bear. Yes. Adam Tease,
Yes.
Jim Silverstein.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item, back to Mr. Whitlatch, is the specifics of the CMC contract.
Yes, thank you. Same parameters and projects assumptions, obviously, as we had on the architect's contracts. The services that Weta will be providing include construction manager as constructor, CMC. All requirements were met or met within this agreement as were provided in the issued RFP. So this is basically the contract that we made available for review when we issued the RFP. There are some early bid packages that will be part of the final project cost. And those anticipated bid packages are in the second column of that PowerPoint. The first fee that we will owe to Weddle Brothers will be the pre-construction fee, which Deb can speak to that better than I can, but generally is going to involve assistance with feasibility, estimating, all those types of things. That's $65,000, and that's going to be the pre-construction phase between now and construction. And then the fee that will be paid is going to be based upon a 1.9% fee. The second slide that I think Deb has is showing the schedule. And again, I'll let Deb speak to that here in a second, but gives the schedule and the completion date. We did make sure, seems pretty elementary, but something that you always have to be aware of. We did make sure that the architect's schedule and the construction manager's schedule match up and are consistent with each other. So this is that schedule. I will say that we have not given Weddle a lot of time to look at our final version other than what was part of the RFP. I will say that there's one issue that I'm recommending that we leave open from the draft that was sent to you, and ask that the contract be approved with everything but the issue of liquidated damages for in the event that the project is not completed on time. And right now we have a fee in there that Weddle Brother has a concern about. We understand that, and we would propose that for purposes of approving this for signature today, that we modify the contract to leave that fee blank, and then we will negotiate that with Weddle Brothers and bring that one aspect of the contract back as an amendment, presumably at the next meeting, but otherwise approve the document for signature by John as is. So with that, I'll let Deb or Mary or anyone else on our design team comment on this contract and the work of Weddle Brothers. And I don't know if Chris Cioli or anybody's there as well that may want to comment too.
And before we do that, I just want to mention that the pre-construction fee that you saw on the slide is part of our adjusted budget we've already submitted to the city council. That's now in the process of going to the FabTech and back again. So that's why you don't see it in next year's budget. It's already in the adjusted budget for this year. So with that, Deb?
Sure. So in terms of the schedule, maybe let's think about key dates here. So the new construction will be constructed first, and then the determination of the renovation will be second. So the idea is to get the new construction, move everybody in, and then do the renovation. So I know we've taken some time to get to this point, but we've been able to work with the architect and with the construction manager to continue to focus on a December 2026 completion of the new construction. And the way that we're doing that is by doing what's called early bid packages. So there's 3 bid packages that were listed here. And those bid packages are first a utility, site work, and long lead items. If you're trying to get electrical switchgear right now, it takes over a year. So we got to get it ordered early, like an elevator. We got to order some long lead items early. The second bid package is structural, so structural steel, footings that go with that. And then bid package 3 will be all the remaining work. That will happen basically kind of mid-spring through the summer. So we will have a pretty tight window of when we do those bid packages, but by getting started early, we will able to allow them to mobilize earlier and get started and still get enough work done before the winter so they can keep moving. So ultimately, the final renovation completion, depending on how much is done here, will be the summer of 2027. But it allows us to finish the new construction in December of 2026, which has kind of always been the target. In the recent months, that's been the target. And then ultimately move everyone over. The January, February timeframe is really the ideal time for the convention shift to happen because they have less conventions during that time. So it's really trying to marry up with them, with their schedule, but also get the revenue started for you as well, because the key here is they have to be selling this so that they're prepared to host conventions in the spring of 2027.
Okay, any, questions from members of the board? Yes.
Just a point of clarification on the CMC fee, the 1.9% is 1.9% of the 52 million?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And in your experience, Deb, how does that compare to industry standards or general
It is
practices?
It is a great fee. Yeah. Yeah, they are that shows me that they are a committed partner to this project.
I asked for questions before we had a motion, so let me see first if there's a motion to approve the contract, the CMC contract, and then we'll ask for additional questions. So, motion by member Polling, second by member Spoonmore. Okay, any further questions, comments, discussion?
I was also just going to note that they also discounted their pre-construction fee. Consider what.
I think they were also the low bidder too.
They were.
Yeah.
Mr. Teets.
In the contract materials, is there a statement as to when their guaranteed maximum price will come in their bidding process? When will that come?
So the guaranteed maximum price will be based on the construction documents that come out of Schmidt's office. So for each package, Schmidt is accelerating their work in order to provide a set of complete documents for bidding.
So it will predate the bidding process for all three packages?
No, we will go out to bid with package number one that is based on site work and utilities, and that design work will be basically 100%. And then structural will follow, and then the remaining one will follow. So we will come back to this board 3 times for guaranteed maximum prices. So there'll be a guaranteed maximum price for the first set, GMP, the second one, and then we'll do a final one that wraps all of them together.
Where's the risk in that for our contractor? If they go to the bid market prior to giving us a guaranteed maximum price, where's their risk?
So in order to, I would say, also limit risk to the CIB, in order to keep things moving, we've gone forward. Personally, I've done lots of multiple GMPs, and the risk aspect of this is, yes, they're carrying it because a lot of their risk on the bid packages, frankly, is in those first 2 packages. So they're going to carry that early, knowing that not all of the design documents are done until the final third one.
So why wouldn't we ask for a GMP after the first two bid packages?
But that could be, we do, that's a question. That'd be something that we continue to converse about. That won't change the pre-construction fee, so it's a good thing. But we can continue that conversation. So possibly.
My point is, we never save money. This is industry. You do not save money through going through construction manager at risk because we've chosen a partner in advance. But we gain certain other things. And if that's the case, then we should gain the certain other things, which is the risk. And if there's no risk, then there's no difference. We've lost the advantage. So I guess I would ask that we consider, our owner's representative consider advising us on how to have a guaranteed maximum price issued before we have all the bids in hand for the contract, because then there's no risk on the contractor to be efficient and go get more bidders and to generate the bid market that will be needed for this project.
We can definitely take that into account.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? All right, hearing none, we have a motion on the floor. So, Mr. Paris, will you take the roll, please?
John Wyckoff,
Yes?
Doug Bruce,
Yes.
Eric Spoonmore.
Yes.
Louis Polling,
Yes.
Jay Bear, Yes. Adam Tees,
Yes.
Jim Silverstein.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So item number 6, review of the master schedule. Deb?
So maybe just tee this up and then I'm going to let Sarah touch about it. This is really a recap of what you've just heard about in terms of the schedule, but we're really entering into the design phase. So, we've been talking about design a lot recently about which direction we're going to go, what's sort of the massing, but we're really getting into starting to get into the details of that design. And there are 3 stages of that. And so we really want Sarah to talk a little bit more about what does that mean? What should the CIB expect? But again, just recognizing that we are now entering into lots and lots of details about design. And so that's where many of the updates to the CIB will be about in the future.
So we've got three big design phases that are coming up. We're starting conceptual design right now, which is schematic design and another more architectural language. Our goal is to be wrapped up with conceptual design by the end of September, which means we should have the program set, we should have the main spaces and the main systems decided upon. At the end of that phase, we move into final design. Final design, that phase is about picking the major project components to a greater level of detail. So we'll not only know the mechanical system we're using, we'll know the big components, which we're gonna need to because we're gonna pre-order some of these components pretty quickly. By the time we're done with final design, that'll be December 24th is the date we've set. We're gonna let people have one day off for the holidays and they're back at it on the 26th. Because then we have a pretty rapid construction document phase. That phase runs all the way through the end of July of 25. But that's a little bit misleading because like we said, working with the construction team, we're actually gonna have 3 different sets of construction documents that go out. An early site release package, so you'll see things happening on site while we're still buttoning up all the details from the architectural package itself. We'll have a secondary package that gets us our steel, that gets us our foundations, and then the rest of the bidding package. So you will see things happening on site in advance of all the construction documents being complete. Throughout this process, we'll be giving bi-weekly updates to the CIB of what the design team is doing, what happened in the last 2 weeks, what's gonna happen in the next 2 weeks, so you'll always know. You have those available, so you can share them on the website at your pleasure. We'll also be back at this meeting. Immediately, the next thing that's going to happen is thank you, Deb, is we're gonna start meeting with some of our collaborators. So Downtown Bloomington, BEDC, Visit Bloomington, those folks setting up those meetings to talk through this concept package, what it is they need, because they're partners of the work that we do here. At the end of that conceptual design phase, so the end of September, we are also going to issue an invitation to the community to come in and see the design progress, to see how the design has evolved from where it was last time. And so you'll see that on the website as well.
By last time you mean the 2019?
Yes, but from the 2019. What logic of that? Questions?
Anything else, Deb, on that?
That's
Any questions about that master schedule? Mr. Teese?
It would be really helpful to see where the various approval bodies have approval. To me, that's a giant risk to this whole schedule. 30 days, kicking these bid packages back 30 days is real money. Bloomington has a defined bidding window for success. I live personally on a daily basis. So I think it's really important that we know what for all of you time is money. That's what I'm trying to say that ever since. So if things suddenly go 60 days, 90 days, those are real costs to this project.
We have been working closely with JSL and with our civil engineer to try to build in all the approval processes that we believe we're gonna need, but
Any other questions or comments? All right, let's move on to the design process update, the collaborator meetings, if you will. I know you've had a slide up, but would you like to?
maybe I'll just add to the slide represented some of those. Obviously, that doesn't represent our 2 big parties, which is the county and the city. And so those things are ongoing as well. And so we put that in words there. We just don't have the logos up. I will mention that the first of these collaboration meetings are starting July 24th and 25th. There's a lot of them that are happening during that time frame. So if you hear about those dates, those happenings, we are taking a whole host of people to those organizations to have those meetings. So they are starting in earnest very, very quickly.
And I noticed on the slide you had the logos for various organizations, but also on the second day of those meetings, you're also meeting with various city departments or utilities or.
That's what I say. Yeah, we probably should have put not intentional. We should probably put the county and the city's logos up there. So that's.
Yes, yes. So you saw some groups they're going to meet with, but in addition, on the second day, they're, and help me so I don't miss anybody, but planning department, utilities, who am I missing?
No, those are the key ones. Engineering, yeah, utilities and planning are the two key ones.
Okay.
Yeah, so-
Okay. All right, item number 8, hotel RFP update. Deb?
I should have left my presentation up here. On the hotel RFP has been issued. It is on the website. It was shared to, all of our RFI respondents, excuse me. And so with that, there is here's a quick schedule. So we issued it on the 28th. There is a letter of intent deadline that's today at 4:00. And so we've been pleased so far with the amount of responses we have got. So we have high hopes that we'll have many responses. The actual deadline for the submission is July 26th. There is a possibility that we may be asked to extend that based on the respondents and some of the discussions that are going on. So I've always recommended that if it's a couple of weeks and it gives us the opportunity to get more submissions, that is usually a positive thing. And so we will see how that goes. We have not been formally asked, but there's sort of some hints around that. And then ultimately, evaluating those and heading toward an interview date. If the interviews are to make sure that we understand what are they proposing, what are, clarifications and things like that. But keep in mind that once that happens, assuming that this goes on either county land or city land that has been identified for use, associated with the convention center, that would either of the public bodies would have to go through a formal public offering, based on state statute. And then this final selection will follow that process. So keep in mind that the assumption is that it very likely will be built on one of those, ownership of one of those lands, and depending on which location, would trigger some kind of public offering or real estate, again, based on the state statute.
And we're using the same process that we've used before. There's an evaluation group, if you will, who helped put the RFP together, who will evaluate that, make recommendations back to the board. The interviews will be, as we have in the past, those will be the board as a whole in public meetings. So we'll use the same process and be consistent in that process as we've used in the past. And certainly I agree with Deb and support what she's suggesting. That we don't want to close the door on any potential hotelier if they're asking for a modest extension of a deadline to get an RFP. And so we'll deal with that as we come across it. Questions?
Got several letters of intent. Do you have a number for us?
I do not have all set. Yeah, they have till 4:00, so we're gonna let them do that. But overall, we've been very pleased with the responses, so.
And since you didn't ask me to recognize, I won't note that she didn't answer your question.
Okay.
All right, anything else on the hotel RFP? All right, is there any old business to be brought before the board? Any new business to be brought before the board? Comments from board members? Mr. Bear.
I just want to rewind a couple points on the outreach meetings. What is the desired takeaway of those? Are we saying in an unstructured way, give us your wish list? Are we providing those groups a list of potential project attributes and saying, rank these? Like I've done a lot of market research in my life. So what is the mechanism by which this feedback will be gathered, assessed, analyzed, and then presented to this body?
If I could ask a clarifying question, are you talking about the collaborator meetings in particular? Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure, yeah. So there's kind of two parts to the collaborator meetings. There are staff focused, operationally focused discussions, right? With Talisha and her group and sort of how does loading really happen? How does food get transferred,
For
right?
sure.
So that's probably fairly understandable about those kinds of conversations, because it's really about operationally, how do you do it? What are the challenges? How do we fix some of those challenges in the new design? Then there is other bodies that we're really talking about what are the key goals of this project and how do we ensure that we're going to meet those goals? So an example might be, we want the convention center to reflect the uniqueness of Bloomington. Now, I would dare say if I asked each of you to reflect on what you think that uniqueness would be, there's a variety, right? So it's that, I would say, community response. How do we really ensure that these big goals are met? That's really the kinds of conversations that we're having with the chamber board, right? With BEDC. So with some of those broader, with the BEAD advisory. Those are the kinds of conversations. We will not be having conversations about how the logistics happens about running the convention center. So, but it's really about how do we make sure that we're really going to meet those goals?
So more
Anything to add to
unstructured
that?
feedback, more just like, what do you guys think?
Right, and so how I anticipate bringing that back to this group would be mechanisms like word clouds, mechanisms like through lines,
Yeah.
right? So we can see, the most commonly heard word was X, Y, Z. So tone, authenticity, that's what we're after with that.
And in fairness, we want to make certain that we're describing the process to those we're asking their opinions. And that we're saying we're seeking your input. We're not abdicating responsibility for the final design or decisions to you. In my career, I've often been involved in conversations with parties who I've asked for their input, and then when a decision's made, they'll say, you asked for my input, but you didn't do what I told you. And I've said to them, but I heard you. I mean, I heard what you said, but the decision was made based on hearing what everybody had to say. So we need to make sure we're describing this as input from these various groups.
Thanks, it's great.
Other questions, comments? Bruce?
As we look at this schedule, one thing that I thought, and I don't know where this will happen or what you can provide, but I'm sure as as these conventions, especially for the new building, book out in advance quite some time, I assume that we'll be able to provide the staff here with materials like 3D renderings and space plans and things. And that's in the design schedule somewhere so that they can, as it looks like we're keeping up with this schedule and they know, okay, this is going to open up December of 26, that they're booking this thing in 25.
The way the phasing is initially envisioned, right, there will actually be two opening dates. One is the opening date of the new facility, two would be the opening date of this facility, which allows for us to move set and for them to book one facility or the other the entirety of the time. That is the goal, is that you don't have any, there's no black days for Talisha and her staff. She can book either the new facility or this facility the entire time.
And that's just, again, just because they've got to book it so far in advance and they're gonna need some sort of materials. And it also is key, obviously, I don't know where that shows at some point for the dollars. As we look at the rentals that come in, those dollars that help pay for this and run the facility as well. But them being able to jump on that as soon as they can, I would imagine at some point there'll be a discussion about that.
Yes.
Okay.
So the team is printing boards for Talisha right now for delivery. It's tomorrow, I think. In order for her to start telling us.
Perfect.
Other comments from board members? Mr. Spoonmore.
Got a comment and a related question, and as we're kind of talking about community goals with this project, I think, we're all talking to our appointing bodies very regularly about, what the community wants to see with this project. I think some of the feedback that I've been hearing is that, as we look at construction and the various ways that we get this building put together, is prioritizing organized labor and, looking at the option of a project labor agreement. I think everyone understands that that adds some cost to the project. But I think it would be among the elected officials that I've spoken with, I believe a goal that we should explore and look towards. And so, that would be something I think I would like to advocate for as well. But I don't know all the details of, when do we need to, I know our construction manager has a extensive experience working with these types of arrangements, which I really appreciate. When do we need to know the details of that? Project labor agreement would essentially allow workers to collectively bargain terms and conditions of the employment on this project before we get started with it. And so if that's something that needs to happen before the project commences, when do we need to start thinking about those and having those conversations?
Yeah, sure.
We do not have to decide that today, of course. But that is something that needs to be determined, well before the bidding of any project, because those terms must be inserted into the documents prior to bidding. So it would happen, those decisions would definitely happen sooner than later, but would definitely be, we'd have a couple of months to.
Okay.
And if I may, I would encourage, Mr. Spoonmore to bring that proposal back to the board next month and seek a motion in support of that, so that we're on the record, in support of that plan. So I'd ask you to do that for our next meeting. Any other comments?
Just a comment
Oh,
on that.
Mr. Bear.
If we're gonna do that next meeting, I think we need to have what actually is the cost ramifications of that, otherwise it's gonna be hard to vote.
Yeah, we can, and I would ask that if you're able to do that, that be a part of that.
We may need 2 months just.
Okay, well, that's fine. And whenever it's appropriate, would you bring that back to the board as a proposal for
Yes.
consideration?
Yeah, and then again, the very preliminary stuff here, I just wanted to get the conversation started.
Yeah, so including, if I understand Mr. Bear correctly, a cost analysis of what that means.
Yeah, it's just gonna be hard to vote otherwise.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, good, thank you. I want to use my time, if I may, to comment on, our colleague Jim Silberstein, who was in, Cleveland on June 22nd, as the producer of a historical documentary. I hope I get this right, Hoosier Heroes of the Great War.
Over there.
Hoosier Heroes of the Great
Yeah.
War, with Joe Throckmorton, producing partner, and they, were awarded the Emmy for a historical documentary, based on their production. And I want to congratulate Mr. Silverstein, and I know that's been a big effort on his part, and he tells me that he's got another one that's, both in his head and soon to be in production. So congratulations,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Silverstein.
Bring it in next month.
It's not in the car?
That's a good looking, award too.
Yeah,
Very cool.
And the link that you sent out, the movie is fantastic.
Yeah.
The interviews, and reenactors, everything that you have in that, it's fantastic.
and I may have known you for almost 20 years perhaps, but I don't believe I've ever seen you in a tie, and I really wanted to congratulate you.
So that's on their website.
Yes, and I understand it was a gift from your wife, so that's.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good, very good.
That's the tie.
All right, okay, any other comments? Next board meeting, let me repeat, is August 14th, 2024 at 3 p.m. Back in this room. Mr. Teese.
You skipped over comments from the public.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Comments from the public. Thank you, Mr. Teese. Comments from the public. All right, seeing and hearing none, next board meeting, item 13, August 14th, 2024 at 3 p.m. And with that, you don't have to go home if you can't stay here. We are adjourned.
They recognize